The opening scene shows Sandile Ngubeni and his girlfriend Sente driving to church. They're already late for the service, so he runs inside the church and begins to fight over a seat with his brother until the pastor interferes in the silent banter. The choir minister sings beautifully, and Mrs. Ngubeni, Sandile's mother, is also a choir member at the church. The service ends, and Mrs. Ngubeni is speaking with the pastor when Bridget, a rival choir member, comes seeking the pastor's attention and subtly throws shades at Mrs. Ngubeni. To get back at Mrs. Ngubeni, she announces the proposal party of her second son, which is supposed to be a secret, and even invites the church. Later in the evening, Sente meets her artist boyfriend in his studio. She finds him making some music with Kels, one of the singers on his label. The lovebirds soon go on their way to his brother Menzi's restaurant for their date night. They arrive at Menzi's, but as soon as Sente steps out of the car, she comes back immediately to get her jacket. She finds a pink brassiere tucked in by the driver's seat. She confronts Sandile, who pretends like he doesn't know who owns it. The perfect distraction for a beautiful date and proposal evening. Meanwhile, Menzi the chef is anxious and agitated. He'll be having lots of people come into the restaurant today, all thanks to his mother for inviting the whole church. He consistently scolds one of his chefs named Mondla until the young man angrily declares that he quits and is no longer interested in working with him. Menzi chases Mandla, pleading with him not to abandon him at such a critical moment. They soon end up outside only to find Sente and his brother arguing seriously over the brassiere. In annoyance, Sente calls off their 6-year relationship because she's tired of dealing with Sandile's unfaithfulness. Mrs. Ngubeni and her third son, Sky, walk out of the car only to find out that the night she's been waiting for ever since is now ruined by Sandile, and he's not even doing anything to remedy the situation. She slumps to the ground. By the time she opens her eyes, she finds herself at home with a doctor wrapping up her treatment. When he's done, he tells her sons to ensure nothing bothers her because her current state is fragile. Sky seems to be overwhelmed by the doctor's handsomeness. He draws the attention of the others, seeking their opinion on the doctor's looks as he walks out of their house. Their mother asks them to get her the photo of her late husband Jonas. She takes the picture and cries, pleading with God to send Jonas to come to take her away with him, because her children keep disappointing her, and she's tired of living without grandkids or daughter-in-law. She tells them that she's going to put their house up for sale since none of them is willing to get married. Her sons plead with her, bringing up different reasons why she shouldn't. So, Mrs. Ngubeni makes a deal with them and promises to give the house as a wedding present to the first one of them to get married by the end of the year. Otherwise, she'll sell the property. The competition to find a wife officially begins. Sky's fashion studio is in his parents' house. Lynx, a friend and Sky's model, comes visiting and he fills her in on his mother's deal. Lynx suggests he gets a gay marriage done, but he cuts her off and explains that he's not gay. He reveals that he has a girlfriend, and their relationship is a secret. Lynx advises him to convert his imaginary girlfriend into an imaginary wife so he can keep the property, and turn the place into a fashion house when he becomes the owner. At Sandile's place, some men come knocking. He opens up and Lunga introduces himself as one of Brazake's men, a loan shark whom Sandile owes. Sandile knows he's in for it. He pleads with Lunga not to take his car and promises to pay the loan shark. Lunga decides to give him some more time and decides to take his sofa instead. In the next scene, Menzi is busy working in his kitchen when a young lady named Dina walks in. She introduces herself as a chef and requests to know if the vacancy for the chef is still open. Menzi seems to have issues with women, and he's not willing to let one into his kitchen. He starts to raise his voice, asking her to leave, but this lady seems to be very persistent. She walks into the kitchen and tastes the dish on the table. Then, she adds a few ingredients to enhance the taste. When she's done, she stuffs a spoonful in his mouth, and truly, it tastes great. Menzi dismisses her request and tells her that he's going to see if she'll get the job or not. Meanwhile, Sandile decides to go seek forgiveness from Sente. She gets out of her car, about to walk into the house, when she sees him holding some roses. Instead of being happy, she scolds him for bringing her roses to apologize. She's even more enraged to know that they've been together for years, and he doesn't know that she's allergic to roses. He stands there dumbfounded for a few seconds, before calling out to her not to enter her house. Sente opens the door to find rose petals littered all over the living room. She turns towards Sandile, who is standing close to the door with her eyes burning in rage. Sandile feels guilty as he watches her sneeze while glaring at him. Mrs. Ngubeni arrives late to the first meeting for the New Year's Eve planning committee, where she is the president. She begins the meeting, but her rival Bridget takes over and announces her daughter's wedding. The pastor calls her to order, and she soon switches back to the plans for the concert. However, this time, she's emphasizing Mrs. Ngubeni should take a rest, so she can plan and organize the event herself, to be more fabulous than what Mrs. Ngubeni has done in previous years. At Menzi's, Dina is beginning to settle into the restaurant, and she's now actively involved in the kitchen activities. Menzi, in his usual state, starts ranting and complaining about the parsley. One of the waiters informs him that a customer is complaining about Dina's soup. However, since he has tasted the soup and knows it is delicious, he steps out to convince the customer. Unfortunately, the situation turns into a squabble, ending in Menzi staining the customer's shirt with the soup. Dina, who is watching the whole thing from the door, feels a bit honored. While assisting him to clean up the stains on his shirt, she thanks him for fighting for her food because no one has done that for her before. Well, the discussion lingers a bit, and Menzi shares the major thing bothering him at the moment. He explains how losing the house simply means losing the restaurant as well, because it's difficult to find a girl who'll meet his high standards and moral code. Dina listens and understands his plight. So, she informs him that starting the next day, they'll begin the search for a woman to suit him. But what if she turns out to be the one whom she wants to search for? Let's see how it'll play out. Later that night, Mrs. Ngubeni is walking by when she overhears her youngest son talking about a relationship on the phone. She walks in and asks who he's speaking to. Sky reveals it's his girlfriend. A girlfriend? Yeah, exactly the question on her mind as she claps her hands together in surprise. The next day at work, Dina intentionally wears short sleeves, revealing her tattoo which Menzi wants her to hide. As she's going about her duties in the kitchen, Menzi brings out a spreadsheet he had prepared so she'll know exactly the kind of woman he wants. Dina scoffs and asks him to just say what he wants. It turns out, it's the entire opposite of her. In love, you never can tell what will catch your fancy. Anyway, let's not forget Sandile, who is determined to win his girl back. He makes his way into Sente's office and heads for the boardroom where she's making a presentation. One of her colleagues by the name Thabo stops him midway. He explains that Sente doesn't want to see him. Thabo questions how he could forget that his girlfriend is allergic to roses. Meanwhile, Sandile stares at this guy, wondering who he is and why he's doing all of this. He turns around and takes his leave without saying another word to Thabo. Sandile returns to the studio, but he's distracted. He isn't even paying attention to what Kels is singing until she calls for his attention. She suspects he must have cheated, which is why Sente left him. So, she urges him to spill the truth already. He clears the air and makes her understand that as a guy, he stares and smiles at ladies, but he has never done anything with anyone including her. Kels thinks he might just be one of the good men since he's free. She's about to suggest they hook up, but he refuses and insists on finding a way to get his girl back. Anyway, Dina is doing her work with Menzi as discussed. She coaches him and sets him on several dates with different ladies. It turns out every single one of them has at least one flaw that doesn't fit into Menzi's standards. He even meets with a lady who wants a throuple with him and her husband. That's the deal breaker for Menzi. He believes this plan of Dina's is not going to work, and he's absolutely done with trying. Sandile decides to try winning Sente over again, and this time, he arranges with Kels to assist him in serenading her at her workplace. They walk in with a mic and speaker. Kels starts singing to the amusement of the other workers at the office until Sente comes downstairs angrily. In a minute, her heart softens and she asks Sandile to leave, promising she'll meet with him just so they can talk. He smiles because it's a good sign, of course it is. He might just get his girl back. He goes back home to join the rest of his family for dinner and uses the opportunity to confirm if the deal is still open, as he informs them that he'll be meeting with Sente. Mrs. Ngubeni's joy knows no bounds. At least Sandile's relationship looks more promising when compared with the other two who haven't introduced a girl to her. She prevents Sandile from eating anchovies because he's allergic to them. His brothers stare at each other with an evil plot in their minds. They have something planned out for him. When Sandile and Sente finally decide to meet, they choose Menzi's restaurant as their meeting place. Menzi and Sky are planning to add anchovies to their brother's food. They claim it's for Sente's good because she doesn't deserve someone like Sandile in her life. They spy on the lovebirds who are trying to talk about fixing their relationship. Sente is not impressed at all because she can still see his eyes following other women passing by, and one even dares to come whisper into his ears. She makes a move to leave, but Sandile pleads with her not to. He begins to appeal to her, but she wants the truth about the bra, and he insists that he doesn't even know who owns it. In the course of trying to make her believe him, his stomach starts rumbling. He's pressed and needs to use the toilet thanks to his brothers. Sente refuses to wait until he returns from the toilet as she takes her leave. Sandile runs to the restroom making threats at Menzi, who intentionally added anchovies to his meal. By the time he gets back home later in the evening, he's stunned to find Lunga in his apartment. He questions how he was able to access his house and threatens to fight him. Seeing that he means business, Sandile tries to make him give more time to him to sort his loan after inheriting his family home, which he'll sell or take a loan with. Well, Lunga means business and he's not leaving without something. He orders his boys to take out Sandile's drums and he follows behind. Meanwhile, Sky is plotting with Lynx. They plan to get married so he gets to inherit the house, while Lynx gets to throw her parents off her back because they are always pressuring her about getting married. To the surprise of everyone, he announces it to his family the next day at church. Bridget taunts Mrs. Njubeni about the sale of the house, and her son-in-law-to-be, Dr. Kumalo, is even offering to buy it. Sky decides to tell them that he's engaged to Lynx. His brothers and mom are all taken by surprise. However, Mrs. Ngubeni is excited that the time he has been spending in the studio with Lynx is being put to good use. Bridget and her crew walk away silently, while his brothers are simply taken by shock while their mother praises God. They soon disperse and walk to take a seat when Sandile sees Sente coming. He walks over to her explaining that his brothers set him up. He requests for one more chance to prove he's ready to take her seriously, or maybe he only wants her so he can acquire the house. After service, Menzi informs Dina that he's unquitting and he's ready to continue the search. Sihu is becoming desperate, especially with the news of his youngest brother's relationship. Dina, however, isn't ready to do as he pleases for now. She focuses on the cake decorations she's doing and tells him that they'll continue after the Christmas lunch for the orphans. He's confused, but it doesn't seem like she'll change her mind. Sky meets up with Lynx, and they are discussing how he's going to convince her parents who are already suspecting her. He doesn't look like he's straight even though he says so, and she thinks his walk needs to be worked on. She teaches him a few moves on how to walk like a man as they are strolling down the road, a great way to start. Later that evening, Sandile takes Sente with him to a place. He blindfolds her and leads her to the spot where the hot air balloon he has prepared for them is. He's not taking chances with his brother's restaurant again. We can say he's smoothing the ground, and Sente seems to be loving it, seeing how she's smiling. They get on the air balloon, but he doesn't want it to take off because he's scared of heights. They soon start discussing, and Sente is revealing the kind of solid relationship she wants, which is quite different from what Sandile wants, because he's still at the stage of playing games. He then tells her that he had bribed the guy in charge not to let the balloon take off. Sente chuckles and tells him that they've already taken off. In that instant, he panics and struggles to get down. He gets out holding the edges of the carrier while swinging his legs back and forth, saying he wants to get down. Sente calms him down and tells the guy to take them down before he falls off and breaks his head. Hilarious. After they get down, he thanks her for saving him, and it suddenly dawns on him that she has always been the one saving him even when he gets lost. He brings out the ring he borrowed from his mom and promises to buy her a ring when the moment is right. He proposes to her and asks the surprised Sente to marry him. Sente is stunned, but she still wants to know who the bra belongs to before going into the next level with him. Realizing that he must cross that hurdle before she'll fully accept him back, he explains that it was a random girl. He pleads with her and assures her that he's a changed man and he's ready to be who she wants. It's Christmas lunch at the orphanage already. Dina goes on with the preparations while Menzi comes out dressed as Santa. The kids excitedly cheer seeing Father Christmas walk in. They soon start to hit him in excitement, and he carefully runs away. He reveals to Dina that it's the reason he doesn't like children. Then he questions what her deal is with the orphanage. Dina reveals that she used to be in the orphanage, which comes as a surprise to Menzi. Sky, who is dressed as an elf, informs them that he needs to leave because he's had lunch with Lynx and his mother. It seems Menzi and Dina do not see that they might just be what they need for each other. They ask Sky to wait a little longer, as they need to take Santa's pictures with the kids. Sandile walks into the restaurant with Sente and introduces her as the new future Mrs. Ngubeni. Driven by jealousy but not intending to cause any serious harm, Menzi reveals that Sandile is only using her to get the house. Sente feels betrayed, angry, and broken. With tears in her voice, she begs Sandile to never talk to her again as she takes off his ring and walks out of the restaurant. Immediately as she walks away, Sandile rushes over to his brother and begins to fight him while the kids run down to assist in defending Santa. A few minutes later, Sky runs back home for his lunch date with his mom, Lynx, and her parents. He apologizes for arriving late. Just as he and Lynx are into convincing her parents that they are a real couple, Sandile comes into the house. He sees this opportunity as a payback time. He greets everyone cheerfully with a woman named Gugu. Sky knows that his brother is out to get his revenge and ruin his chances. So he confronts Sandile, who seems pretty excited. It turns out that Gugu is Lynx's lover, and she threatens to walk away if Lynx doesn't tell everyone who she is. She seems very upset that her lover is getting married behind her back. Lynx doesn't have many choices, so she introduces her girlfriend to everyone, leaving her parents and Sky disappointed for different reasons. That night at Menzi's restaurant, Dina takes him on a bike ride across town. He is skeptical at first, but soon begins to enjoy it as they howl at the moon. They arrive at a destination, and Dina begins to advise him to take a chance with his life, instead of sabotaging his brother. She set him up on another date, with a respectful, courteous, and serious-minded young lady, who was just like him in every way. This time around, Menzi looks like he's really going to like the woman. She even has a checklist of the things she's looking for in a man, surprising Menzi as he also has his own list. She might just be the female version of Menzi. They work together as they check off each other's criteria. Menzi smiles all throughout, and he looks satisfied with their date, which feels more than a business meeting. Meanwhile, Sandile has returned to his studio. He and Kells are checking out their latest song, which they believe will be a hit, but Sandile suddenly suggests to start all over. He's been hearing this sound in his head, and he wants to try it, be it a hit or not. Kells supports him, and together, they work on the piece. Several days pass, and they continue working on this new song. Sandile encourages Kells to sing from within and find that thing missing that needs to bring the song alive. His desire to produce a hit song that will bring him enough money to clear his debts seems to inspire the artist in Sandile. Menzi, on the other hand, realizes certain things as he confesses his fears to Dina. He shares how close he was to his father, whom he always cooked with back in the days, and his sudden fears which arose after his old man's passing. The only place where he finds peace and comfort is in the kitchen. As he previously agreed on with Penny, he introduces her to his mother on their second date in the restaurant. Mrs. Ngubeni warns him not to mess with her because she can't take one more nonsense from him or his brothers. After what happened with Sky, her heart might just stop if either of her sons crushes her hopes again. Penny assures her that Menzi and her reached a contract after due diligence was made, so she has nothing to worry about. Mrs. Ngubeni stares at them with a lot in her mind. Dina serves them a special lunch, and Menzi introduces his head chef to his mother. Mrs. Ngubeni observes Dina's attitude as she unsuspiciously drags an item on the table with Menzi. She has to admit that Dina is different from other chefs his son had. Meanwhile, Penny thinks Dina's short sleeve is unprofessional. She turns to face her future mother-in-law and informs her of when they intend to get married and have kids. So, she needs to know if they have Mrs. Ngubeni's blessings. The woman is simply awed. She doesn't know what to expect anymore. She permits them to do as they wish, while she watches on and sees how it'll turn out. At the studio, Kells finally sings the song from the depths of her. Sandile is amazed and gives her a hug for doing wonderfully well. She attributes all thanks to him and thanks him for making her an artist as well. They stand facing each other, and for a moment, it seems some emotional wires spark between them. They apologize to each other and resume work when Lunga and his boys walk in. This time he wants to take Sandile's laptop and it's not going to be funny. But then, a job is a job regardless of how much he likes Sandile, whom he cordially refers to as Sandman. A few days later, Penny brings an agreement for Menzi to sign. It seems their relationship is going to be based on certain terms and conditions that Menzi will have to abide by. He's distracted as he watches Dina going back and forth while doing her job. Days pass, and Sky is yet to seek things out with his lover who has refused to see him. Lunga meets Sandile, who is writing some songs. His weird fan congratulates him and reveals that he had released his song after taking the laptop the other day. He shows Sandile some evidence and he can't contain his joy knowing that he's back on the chart. Sandile and Kells' song is making waves throughout the city, and it's even on the top 40 songs for the week. Lunga leads them to some club in town, and it seems Sandile's popularity has reached every lady in the city. An artist even proposes a collaboration with him. Lunga makes some connections and reveals they'll go on a tour for a year. Sandile's mood instantly changes. He's not cool with the one-year-long tour at the moment. Kells encourages him and reminds him that it's their big opportunity to actively get back in the game. She convinces him until he agrees. Lunga soon interrupts their moment, as he invites them on stage to perform for the audience. The crowd cheers as Kells takes on the mic and begins to sing while Sandile does the mix. It's the night before Christmas, and the spirit of Christmas is already sweeping through everywhere. Menzi returns to the restaurant at almost midnight and finds Dina making some recipe while vibing to some music playing through the speakers. She suddenly turns it off immediately when she sees him. It seems as though some chemical emotional reaction is burning somewhere between the two, as Dina tries her best to keep their eyes from locking. Menzi wishes her a Merry Christmas and waits for her to return the wish before he walks away. Christmas falls on a beautiful Sunday morning. The church choir sings beautifully and everyone in the church is overwhelmed by their beautiful voices. Meanwhile, Sandile can't keep his eyes off Sente, who looks like she has forgotten all about him. He continues staring at her all throughout, until the pastor climbs the altar and takes the mic to speak. The mic is having some issues, and soon enough, the voices of Lemagang and Sky can be heard through the speaker, the children of two rival women in the church. The two of them are having some intimate moments as their moaning can be heard from the church speakers. Their mothers hurriedly get up in search of them while Sandile smiles wittily. The pastor joins the women in the search, followed by Sandile, Menzi, and Lemagang's fiancé, Dr. Kumalo. They all criticize the lovebirds, but Lemagang and Sky stand firm, defending their love for each other. They've made peace, and they have no issue letting the world know about their relationship. After all, Bridget was the one who chose Dr. Kumalo, and not Lemagang. Also, Sky has always been telling everyone that he's not gay, but they always choose not to believe him. Well, after the service comes Sunday lunch. Mrs. Nangubeni and Menzi are serving the food when Sky comes in. She was embarrassed by Sky earlier, but she wasn't displeased. The look on Bridget's face is one worth watching. Then, she and her sons burst into laughter. Sandile soon joins the family for lunch, and Menzi gives him a taste of their dad's favorite dish. The joy in the home seems to be restored as they all make a toast, before having a seat and digging into the meal. Mrs. Nangubeni takes a look at her late husband's photo, and smiles satisfactorily, because they had indeed done a good job in raising the boys. A few days after the Christmas celebration, Sandile packs up ready to leave for his tour. Mrs. Nangubeni is happy and emotional at the same time that he's leaving, but she's proud of her son. She calls her boys together for a group hug before letting Sandile move his things to the car, while she watches Menzi help his brother with the bags. Lemagang and Sente are quite acquainted. After the incident at the church the other day, Sente wants to know more about their relationship, which they've kept secret. Lemagang reveals how she and Sky would make out everywhere at the slightest opportunity they got. Even on one occasion where they almost got caught in Sandile's car, and she had to run off leaving her bra behind. Sente is taken by surprise, and she's shocked to her bone upon realizing that Sandile did not lie to her when he said he didn't know about the bra she found in his car. She books a ride instantly and heads for the airport before Sandile leaves the city on his tour. The driver happens to be a fan of Sandile, and he doesn't look like he wants to drive fast. So, she informs him that the guy he loves so much is about to take off to Dubai, and if he doesn't drive faster, she might never see him again. She pleads with him to drive faster, and the surprised driver suddenly steps on the gas and questions why she didn't say she knows such important people. They soon arrive at the airport, and Sente runs through the crowd until she can see her love from afar. She calls out to him, but unfortunately, his earphones are on. Kels hears her and quickly calls Sandile's attention. Now this reunion might just make Sandile quit this trip, or not. Let's see how it'll unfold. She successfully finds her way to where Sandile is, and explains that he's not at fault. He attempts to speak, but she shuts him up with a kiss, and informs him that people are waiting for him at home. He looks at her and smiles. Finally, his relationship trouble is over, and he's glad to have his woman back. In the evening, the pastor and Mrs. Nangubeni are pondering over what to do because the concert preparations are in place. But the most important part of Bridget's preparations is not. Mrs. Nangubeni attempts to offer help, but Bridget shuts her down and walks away. She turns only to find her son walking down with Sente, who informs her that they are engaged. Mrs. Nangubeni is so excited and begins to pray for them. She pulls them for a hug, overjoyed that they are back together. Dina stands where Menzi is serving some coffee and snacks at the event. She tells him that she's leaving because it's time to move on, and she walks away. Menzi is confused. He chases after her, trying to get more explanations from her. Dina turns and reveals to him that she feels embarrassed falling in love with an uptight, control-freak nerd, and it isn't something she'll want to say out loud for people to hear. Menzi watches her as she leaves, and he doesn't even know what his next response should be. Mrs. Nangubeni pleads with Sandile to come through for them because the band Bridget called is not picking up, and they are nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Penny meets Menzi almost immediately after Dina leaves. She informs him that they need to leave because she doesn't like staying out late. Menzi pauses for a second. Then, he finally realizes his feelings for Dina. Right there, he withdraws from the contract with Penny, on the grounds of force majeure, and runs after Dina. He finds her and confesses how he feels, but she discards his feelings. She associates it as one that comes with New Year's Eve, which he'll get over the next day. Menzi goes upstage and takes the mic. He begins to sing a love song belonging to a famous artist. Everyone is stunned, and the audience discredits his poor singing skills, and they boo him. His mother and siblings are dumbstruck. Then Bridget congratulates Mrs. Ngubeni for succeeding in sabotaging her. Meanwhile, Menzi continues singing until the original owner of the song somehow finds her way to the stage and takes over the song from him. Dina climbs the stage, and right before the audience, she kisses her nerdy lover. With a few minutes left until Christmas, the Ngubeni boys are about to make a toast when their mother comes. She gives Sandile the house, but he insists on Menzi having it. Menzi suggests it'll be better for their mom to keep the house. That way, it'll be home to all of them. Their ladies soon come to drag them as it's time for the New Year countdown. Mrs. Ngubeni watches joyfully and lifts her eyes to the heavens, thanking God. The people jubilate as they all count down to a new year full of goodness. Penny pitches her tent with Dr. Kumalo. Well, she's not the only one finding love in the new year. Kells, who is now a famous singer, meets the love of her life and marries Lunga, who can't get enough of her. At the end of the day, Mrs. Ngubeni has the biggest win with all her sons in promising relationships, and she doesn't have to sell the house. So many beautiful and interesting love stories from this family.